The Eagle Has Landed was not just another World War II adventure film. It was a high-wire act built on a dying director's last breath, a studio's cold feet, and a star's terror of playing the enemy. What audiences saw as a slick, patriotic thriller was actually a powder keg of on-set illness, casting controversies, and a plot so morally gray it was systematically softened for public consumption. Behind the scenes of this classic caper, a different kind of battle raged, one with the director's heart attack, a star's rewrite of his own role, and a political climate so tense the film was seen as an apology for the enemy. These are not just production notes, they are the shrapnel from a film that flew too close to the sun. Today, we are parachuting behind enemy lines with 20 weird facts about The Eagle Has Landed. And stay tuned to the end for a bonus fact about the film's original camera negative that is so shocking. It explains why the opening credits look a little off. The film's director was literally dying during production. John Sturges was not just a veteran director helming his last film, he was a man fighting a terminal illness. What audiences did not know was that Sturges had a severe heart condition and suffered a major heart attack during pre-production. The studio considered shutting the film down entirely. It was not just a health scare, it was a production-ending catastrophe. Sturges, the legendary director of The Great Escape, refused to quit. He directed much of the film from a chair, looking pale and frail, with his assistant director, Michael D. Moore, often stepping in to block scenes. This was not just filmmaking, it was a race against death. Every frame of The Eagle Has Landed is a testament to a dying man's iron will. Final, defiant statement from a master who refused to let mortality dictate his final vision. The film's elegant, controlled chaos is a direct reflection of its creator's own desperate struggle for control over his failing body. Michael Caine was terrified he would be blacklisted for playing a sympathetic Nazi. In 1976, just 3 decades after World War II, casting a beloved English movie star as a charismatic, intelligent German officer was a massive gamble. Michael Caine was not just nervous about the role, he was terrified it would destroy his career. What audiences did not know was that Caine initially turned down the part of Colonel Steiner, fearing a public backlash. He worried audiences would never accept him as anything but a British hero. It was not just a role, it was a potential career suicide. He only accepted after director John Sturges personally assured him the character would be written as a professional soldier, not a rabid ideologue. Caine still worked obsessively on his German accent, terrified of getting it wrong and being seen as either mocking or glorifying the enemy. This was not just a performance, it was a high-wire act of public perception, a brave choice that humanized the enemy in a way mainstream films had never dared. The studio forced a happier ending, because the original was too bleak. The Jack Higgins novel the film is based on has a famously dark and cynical ending. The film, however, ends on a note of heroic, if tragic, failure. What audiences did not know was that this was a complete studio-mandated rewrite. The original screenplay and the novel concluded with the plan succeeding and Churchill being kidnapped, leading to a German victory. It was not just a change, it was a thematic reversal. The studio, deeply uncomfortable with a film where the Nazis win, ordered a new ending where the mission fails due to a last-minute coincidence. This was not just studio interference, it was a political sanitization. The film was transformed from a cynical what-if into a more palatable tale of thwarted evil, a decision that fundamentally altered the story's moral complexity and turned a unique thriller into a more conventional adventure. The storm sequence was a real meteorological nightmare. The film's pivotal scene where the German paratroopers land on the English coast during a raging storm was not just a special effect, it was a real, dangerous battle against the elements. What audiences did not know was that the production waited for weeks for a real storm to hit the Cornwall coast, then sent the actors and crew out into gale force winds and churning seas. It was not just a weather delay, it was a life-risking shoot. The small landing craft were tossed around like toys and several actors, including Donald Sutherland, were nearly washed overboard. The chaos you see on screen, the actors struggling to keep their footing in the surf, the genuine terror in their eyes is 100% real. This was not just acting, it was survival. The sequence became one of the most realistic commando landings ever filmed, not because of effects, but because director John Sturges was willing to risk his cast for a shot of authentic nature. Donald Sutherland rewrote his entire role on set. Donald Sutherland's performance as the IRA rogue. Liam Devlin is scene-stealing, quirky, and unforgettable. That is because he made it his own. What audiences did not know was that Sutherland at the height of his post-MASH stardom, fundamentally rewrote his character. He felt the script's version of Devlin was a stereotypical, one-dimensional Irishman. It was not just a suggestion, it was a creative takeover. Sutherland would huddle with the writers between takes, pitching new lines, new bits of business, like the famous watch bit, and a deeper, more tragic backstory. He essentially co-wrote the role as it appears on screen. This was not just an actor making choices, it was a star seizing control of his character's soul. The result is a performance that feels completely separate from the rest of the film's more traditional military archetypes, a chaotic, unpredictable element that makes the entire movie more dangerous and alive. Robert Duvall stayed in character as a Nazi and terrified the cast. Robert Duvall was not just playing Colonel Radl, he was channeling the quiet, bureaucratic evil of a true believer. What audiences did not know was that Duvall, a famed method actor, remained in character as a German officer throughout the entire shoot in England. He did not socialize, he spoke only when necessary, and he maintained a chilling, professional distance from everyone, especially the British crew. It was not just preparation, it was a form of psychological warfare. The other actors have admitted that Duvall's intensity was genuinely unsettling. He was not playing a villain, he was playing a man who genuinely believed in his cause, which was far more frightening. This was not just a performance, it was an immersive masterclass in playing evil, not with a sneer, but with a polite, unblinking professionalism that was absolutely terrifying. Michael Caine's accent was a constant source of on-set anxiety. Despite his preparation, Michael Caine was never fully confident in his German accent, and this insecurity became a quiet torment on set. What audiences did not know was that Caine would constantly ask director John Sturges and his British co-stars if his accent sounded right or ridiculous. He would do a take, then immediately turn to the crew, asking for feedback. It was not just a perfectionist streak, it was a deep-seated fear. Donald Sutherland, in his typical fashion, would deliberately mess with Caine, telling him it sounded more like a Cockney chap on holiday in Bavaria, which only increased Caine's anxiety. This was not just a joke, it was a reflection of the immense pressure Caine was under. The final, controlled accent you hear is a product of this constant, nervous refinement, a performance polished by a star's genuine fear of getting it wrong. The film's grand finale destroyed a real English village. The film's climactic shootout takes place in the quaint English village of Studland Constable. The production did not just use the village as a backdrop, they systematically blew it up. What audiences did not know was that the filmmakers made a deal with the local council to film the final battle there, which involved detonating explosives, firing thousands of blanks, and setting controlled fires. It was not just a movie set, it was a controlled demolition of a real place. The villagers were evacuated and the film's crew turned their peaceful town into a war zone for a week. The damage to some of the historic buildings was significant, requiring extensive repairs after the production left. This was not just a sequence, it was a cinematic invasion, a moment where the line between fiction and reality was literally blown to bits, leaving a real village to clean up the mess of a fictional war. The film was a hit in Europe, but a political curiosity in America. The Eagle Has Landed's reception was split right down the Atlantic. In Europe, it was a massive box office success, hailed as a sophisticated, intelligent thriller. In America, it was a more modest hit that left audiences and critics feeling unsettled. What audiences did not know was that the film's sympathetic portrayal of German soldiers was seen by some American critics as borderline apologists. It was not just a movie, it was a political Rorschach test. Coming just a year after the fall of Saigon, American audiences were accustomed to clear-cut villains. A film that presented the enemy as honorable, professional men was a difficult concept to swallow. The film's lack of a simplistic, patriotic tone made it a commercial and critical curiosity rather than a straightforward hit in the United States, a victim of the political baggage it was brave enough to carry. The score contains a secret theme for the IRA hero. Lalo Schifrin's magnificent score is a masterwork of military precision and tension, but hidden within its orchestral power is a secret melancholic theme. What audiences did not know was that Schifrin wrote a specific recurring melody, a kind of sad penny whistle tune that only plays when Donald Sutherland's Liam Devlin is on screen. It was not just background music, It was a musical character study. The theme is based on traditional Irish folk melodies, but Schifrin gave it a lonely, almost tragic quality. It is the sound of a man without a country, a ghost fighting for a cause he no longer believes in. This musical subtext adds a layer of profound sadness to Sutherland's character, making him the film's true emotional core, a man whose personal war is far more lost than the one the Germans are fighting. The film's twist ending was a last-minute addition. The film's famous twist, that the men kidnapped the wrong man, a look-alike instead of Churchill, was not in the original script or the Jack Higgins novel. What audiences did not know was that this idea was conceived during a late-night story session between producer Jack Weiner and screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz. They felt the original ending, where the Germans simply fail, was too anticlimactic. The wrong man twist injected a brilliant, ironic dose of fate into the proceedings. It was not just a plot point, it was a stroke of genius that elevated the entire film from a simple caper to a tragic fable. This last-minute addition is now considered one of the cleverest twists in war movie history, a perfect, cruel punchline to a meticulously planned mission. The film used real World War II era German equipment. The attention to detail in The Eagle Has Landed is meticulous and for good reason. The production did not just use props, they sourced real, authentic World War II German uniforms, weapons, and vehicles. What audiences did not know was that the film's armorer, a renowned historian, scoured European military museums and private collectors to assemble an arsenal of genuine artifacts. The paratrooper, jump smocks, the MP-40 submachine guns, the Lugers, they were all real, not replicas. It was not just a detail, it was an obsession with authenticity. This commitment to reality gave the film a tangible weight and texture that was unmatched by other war films of the era. The actors were not just holding props, they were handling pieces of history, a fact that added an unspoken gravity to every scene. The connection to the Dirty Dozen is more than just a star. The Eagle Has Landed feels like a spiritual successor to the Dirty Dozen, and for good reason. It shares the same star, Donald Sutherland, the same composer, Lalo Schifrin, and the same producer, Jack Weiner. What audiences did not know was that the film was intentionally conceived as a more elegant, thinking man's version of the same formula. It was not just a similar movie, it was a deliberate evolution, where The Dirty Dozen was about gritty, violent anti-heroes, The Eagle Has Landed was about professional, almost noble soldiers on the other side. The film's more restrained, suspenseful tone was a direct response to the brutal, action-packed nature of its predecessor. This was not just a follow-up, it was a sophisticated reimagining of what a World War II ensemble film could be. The film deliberately avoided a romantic subplot. In a major 1970s studio film, the absence of a romantic subplot is a radical statement. The Eagle Has Landed has no love story. Michael Caine's Colonel Steiner and Jenny Agutter's Molly, the local girl, share a moment of connection, but it is never developed. What audiences did not know was that this was a deliberate choice by director John Sturges. He felt a romance would cheapen the film's central themes of duty and professionalism. It was not just an omission, it was a bold narrative decision. In an era where every blockbuster needed a love interest, Sturges insisted that the only love in the film should be the soldiers' love for their country and their comrades. This refusal to conform to formula makes the film's emotional moments, when they do occur, feel far more earned and profound. Finding the Churchill double was a casting nightmare. The entire plot hinges on the idea that a local man, Arthur Sims, bears a striking resemblance to Winston Churchill. Finding an actor who could believably play this dual role was a monumental challenge. What audiences did not know was that the production tested dozens of actors for the part of Sims, but none had the right physical resemblance or the ability to convey the character's quiet dignity. It was not just a casting call, it was a desperate search. The role eventually went to Edward Hardwicke, a relatively unknown character actor. His casting was a huge gamble, but his performance is so subtle and convincing that the film's central twist works perfectly. The search for the right double was so intense that it almost delayed the start of production, proving that sometimes the smallest role in a script can be the hardest to cast. The film was a massive, unexpected hit in Japan. While the film's reception was mixed in America and successful in Europe, Its most surprising success was in Japan. What audiences did not know was that The Eagle Has Landed became a cultural phenomenon in Japan, breaking box office records and running in Tokyo theaters for nearly a year. It was not just a hit, it was an event. Japanese audiences were particularly captivated by the film's themes of honor, duty, and the tragic nobility of a failed mission. The character of Colonel Steiner, a professional soldier bound by his code even in defeat, resonated deeply with Japanese cultural sensibilities. The film's success there was so profound that it led to a boom in Japanese-produced World War II films that focused on similar themes. It was an unexpected legacy for a film about a German plot in England. The final scene was almost changed to be more hopeful. The film ends with Colonel Steiner and his men making a last stand against the British Army, a moment of heroic suicidal defiance. The studio, however, wanted a different ending. What audiences did not know was that executives at Paramount briefly considered and storyboarded an alternate ending where Steiner and Devlin managed to escape. They felt the original ending was too bleak and downbeat for a mainstream audience. It was not just a suggestion, it was a near miss. Director John Sturges and star Michael Caine fought the change, arguing that the character's honorable death was the entire point of the story. They won the battle, and the film retained its powerful, tragic finale. This was not just a creative debate, it was a fight for the film's soul, ensuring it ended not with a cheap escape, but with a profound final salute. Jack Higgins, the author, has a brief cameo that was cut. The author of the source novel, Jack Higgins, was a celebrated writer, and the production offered him a small cameo as a tribute. What audiences did not know was that Higgins flew to the set to film his scene, a brief appearance as one of the British officers reviewing the aftermath of the raid. It was not just a gimmick, it was a nod of respect. However, when the film was edited, director John Sturges felt the cameo was distracting and broke the film's carefully constructed reality. He made the tough call to cut it. Higgins' moments of screen time ended up on the cutting room floor. This was not just an edit, it was a classic case of a director prioritizing the integrity of his film over a courtesy to its creator, a decision that proved Sturges' unwavering commitment to his vision. The film paved the way for sympathetic enemy war films. Today, we are used to war films like Das Boot and Cross of Iron that portray German soldiers as complex human beings. The Eagle Has Landed was a major early step in that evolution. What audiences did not know was that the film's success in proving it that audiences would accept a sympathetic Nazi as a protagonist directly influenced a generation of filmmakers. It was not just a movie, it was a game changer. Directors like Wolfgang Petersen have cited The Eagle Has Landed as a key inspiration for showing the war from the German perspective. The film proved that the enemy could be compelling, honorable, and even heroic without glorifying the cause they served. This was not just a thriller, it was a crucial turning point that helped humanize the faceless enemy of World War II propaganda. The film is not about war, it is about professionalism. The most shocking truth about The Eagle Has Landed is that, at its core, it is not really a war film. It is a film about work. The central conflict is not about ideology, it is about a group of highly skilled professionals trying to do their job perfectly under impossible circumstances. What audiences did not know was that this was a deliberate theme of Jack Higgins' novel and the guiding principle of John Sturges' direction. Colonel Steiner is not fighting for Hitler. He is fighting for the perfection of his plan. The British are not fighting for good. They are fighting to defend their own professional competence. It was not just a war story. It was a story about the obsession with craft. The film's most suspenseful moments are not about killing, but about whether a guard will notice a forged pass or whether a boat will land on time. This focus on professionalism over patriotism makes the film a timeless, universal story about the nature of work itself. Bonus fact, the original camera negative for the opening credits was partially destroyed in a lab fire. The film's iconic opening, with the title appearing over footage of German paratroopers preparing for their jump, has a slightly grainy, degraded look that seems intentional. It is not. What audiences did not know was that the original camera negative for this entire sequence was partially destroyed in a fire at the film processing lab. It was not just a technical problem, it was a catastrophic loss of a crucial piece of the film. The opening we see today was cobbled together from the surviving, damaged negative and a few second-generation duplicates that had been made for safety. This is why the image quality shifts and looks less pristine than the rest of the film. The damage is permanent. The film's opening credits are literally a ghost, a damaged artifact that survived a disaster to introduce a story about a mission that was doomed from the start. The Eagle Has Landed stands today not just as a great World War II thriller, but as a sophisticated bridge between the gung-ho war films of the old Hollywood and the morally complex cinema of the modern era. It is a film that dared to look at the enemy and see not monsters, but men, professional, honorable, and tragically bound by their duty. What we see on screen is an elegant, suspenseful caper, but behind it is a story of a dying man's last vision, a star's brave choice, and a studio's cold feet. The film's legacy is its quiet revolution. It proved that you could make a war film where the most compelling drama was not in the battles, but in the planning, the waiting, and the quiet moments of shared humanity between supposed enemies. It treated its audience with intelligence, trusting them to follow a complex plot and root for a German hero. A radical act in 1976 that paved the way for a more nuanced understanding of history in popular cinema. The next time you watch The Eagle Has Landed, remember the director in his chair, the star terrified of his accent, and the real storm they sailed into. Because in the art of espionage, the most convincing deception is the one that is built on a foundation of undeniable truth. Hit that notification bell and join us as we continue to uncover the hidden histories of cinema. Because in the world of film, the most daring missions are the ones that take place behind the camera.